we're talking about there's different ways that people will express their blood sugar dysregulation. So you have some individuals that they just have this, they have this reactive hypoglycemia, like we talked about. Other individuals that it seems like their blood sugar is good, their hemoglobin A1C may even look good, but they've got very high fasting insulin. And then
Right.
you've got other individuals that, insulin doesn't seem to be terrible, but their sugar is high, right? And then you've got
Mm,
other individuals that have both high insulin and high blood sugar. And
yeah.
so what is happening when you have high, for somebody that is diabetic, let's say they've got high blood sugar, you talked about how that's toxic for the neurons. What is actually happening? Like what are those sugar molecules actually doing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. And so those are, you just described three patterns there. And I think, um, maybe we could just talk about that for a couple of minutes because I think it's important to look
Yeah.
at that because people get confused, even, even functional medicine practitioners and so forth sometimes get confused because, insulin, uh, in conventional medicine, it's just not looked at all. Rarely ever tested, maybe in cases of, like
Type 1
insulinoma
diabetes
or
or
type 1
yeah.
diabetes. Yeah. But
Yeah.
even that, they don't really look at insulin,
Yeah.
maybe C-peptide. But so it's largely ignored in conventional medicine and functional medicine and sort of, nutritional medicine. You'll hear it talked about, oh, do a fasting insulin. And the normal is, and the range is somewhere usually 2 to 6, something like that, which I totally agree with. But that is assuming blood sugar is normal.
Mm.
So if you have an insulin of 5 and your blood sugar is 300, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
So, you're supposed to be making insulin to bring down your blood sugar. So in that case, we wouldn't say, oh, wow, well, your blood sugar is high, but your insulin's totally normal. No, we would say, okay, your blood sugar is high and you're not making nearly enough insulin to be able to bring your blood sugar down there. So there's a couple problems, probably insulin resistant, but also something is starting to happen with the pancreas and the beta cells, which make the insulin not being able to produce enough. But that's usually late stage. So
Mm.
by the time somebody gets there, they've usually been dealing with this for decades. So what we see in the early stages is, as you said, more normal blood sugar or slightly elevated. So maybe it's in the low hundreds. And then you check that fasting insulin, and instead of it being 5, it's 15 or 30 or 50. And so those people are highly insulin resistant. And so they're having to make huge amounts of insulin to keep their blood sugar down. Now, fortunately, they're able to do that. So their pancreas is working, but it's going to take a huge toll on the pancreas over time. And then you'll see blood sugar will start to climb, insulin will start to fall. So a lot of times we'll see somebody with a blood sugar of say like 130, 140, 150, which is diabetic, and then their fasting insulin will be like 10 or 15. And so those are people who are sort of in between those two. They're starting to lose control of their blood sugar. They're still making insulin, which, by the way, I just want to say, I know this is supposed to be about the brain, but this is a common misconception in conventional medicine. Once you're diagnosed with diabetes, most doctors just believe your pancreas at that point is sort of not making insulin or not making enough insulin. And for most people, I mean, probably 80% of people with type 2 diabetes, the pancreas is making plenty of insulin. It's just they're highly insulin resistant. And so all of this, of course, is related to the brain because the more insulin resistant you are, the higher your blood sugar is, and the higher your insulin levels are for a period of time, the more damage is being done to those brain cells. I sort of went off on a tangent. You had asked me a question there at the end.
Yeah, so following up, so the high blood sugar, when sugar is high, what are the sugar molecules
Oh,
actually
well, yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, once the blood sugar gets high, that's I talked about how high insulin can cause damage, inflammation, and endothelial dysfunction, and can affect kidney health, eye health, and other things. Well, high glucose, that's like a double whammy. So that causes something called glycation, so a form of sort of what we term oxidative stress. It's basically damage to the delicate proteins in our cells, tissues, and organs that that leads to dysfunction. So we call these AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And so if you've ever seen as people age, they get like dark spots on their skin or skin tags and things like that. Those are examples of visible AGEs, advanced glycation end products. They're basically mutated cells, damaged cells from oxidative stress. In this case, it would be from high glucose. So glucose, just like we talked about insulin, very important for the body. But when it gets elevated, glucose becomes very toxic.
Yeah.
So,
and we can measure glycation with the hemoglobin A1C, which is a form of glycation of the hemoglobin
exactly.
within our red blood cells.
Yeah. And so that's a great test for that very reason. If you want to know how much damage is happening to your brain and your blood vessels and your organs like your kidneys or your eyes, the A1C is a good surrogate for that because we're measuring basically damage done to the red blood cell. And the red blood cell also carries oxygen. The hemoglobin on the red blood cell carries oxygen. And when it's sort of sugar coated or loaded down with glucose, it's not able to do that very well. So you get poor wound healing, poor circulation, you get clotting, you get all kinds of problems from having a high A1C and dysfunctional red blood cells. But yeah, mostly it's a window into the damage being done to your body. So normal A1C is around 4.5 to 5.5%. It's a percentage of glycation, or you think about it like sugar stuck to the hemoglobin in the red blood cell. So normal is around 4.5 to 5.5%. If it gets over that, then it starts impairing the function of the red blood cell. So if it gets up to 6, 7, 8, 10, I've seen people at 14. So these are obviously causing massive damage. And there's been studies that show for every 1% that the A1C goes up, so like from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, it's about 18 to 20% greater likelihood of any complication. That could be a heart attack, stroke, dementia, kidney failure, blindness, amputation, all of those things that are associated with high blood sugar.
For every 1% rise in hemoglobin A1C, there's an 18 to 20% rise in some sort of major health complication.
Risk of health complication. Yeah.
Wow.
So it becomes almost logarithmic when you see it go from your A1C go from 6 to 7, which, by the way, 7% is considered acceptable to most general practitioners, at least in the diabetic community. So they would say, well, we don't want you to go too low for all the reasons we talked about earlier. So just keep it around 7. And, they figure they're going to develop complications anyway. So, we don't want them rushed to the hospital and in the middle of the night where I got to go into the hospital and see them. So, let's keep their blood sugar a little high. That's safer, they consider. But, I think that's probably, not great medicine. I think it's, we should always shoot for normal blood sugar. The great Dr. Richard Bernstein, who's a diabetic advocate and endocrinologist, has type 1 himself, says, everyone deserves normal blood sugar, especially diabetics. So anyway, but yeah, 6 to 7%, you're just increasing your likelihood of any of these problems by 18 to 20%. And as it gets higher than that, it gets into really scary territory.